What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Counting Wisdom podcast. I wanted to just make another podcast for today, talking about how we have to keep pushing on our journey. The Bible brings out that as we are on this journey of life, we need to learn what the Bible says about creation. The book of Genesis is very important. I think a lot of people in this world could learn a lot from the book of Genesis, and especially the beginning, to know that God created us, some of the basics about life, and then of course believing that. But it's so important for us to get wisdom, as we try to navigate life. Sometimes we can go through life and not necessarily know how to do something, especially if you are looking to get into a relationship, or you're looking to pursue a career, or whatever it may be. I think it's so important to get advice from others. That's essentially what, books are, and wisdom comes from God, of course, but also taking that advice from others. And I think, of course, essentially getting that essential knowledge from the Word of God. The Bible says that if anyone lacks wisdom, you should ask God, and it says that in the book of James. And so that tells us that a lot of the things that we do in this life, we need to ask God for His advice and His wisdom. But also, I think people do play a big role in our lives. Obviously, that, we are constantly interacting with people. And so, there are older people, there are people in history that have experienced certain things, so many different things that we can learn from those that have gone before us, or those that are a little bit ahead of us, maybe in their 70s or 60s or 50s, who have practical advice. Some advice comes from, hey, this is what I wouldn't do. This is what I, did wrong. But then also, advice is from others of, hey, this is what I did right. I think I did this right in life, and, this really helped. And so, getting wisdom is very important. I think also what we need to do on this journey is to learn how to love. Jesus taught us to love our enemies. I don't think that is always expressing, oh, hey, I approve of everything that you do as my enemy. No, but at the same time, really remembering that, I think, is important too. But also to love people and God in general, I think, is very important. But, when it comes to loving our enemies, there are so many people that we encounter in our life that can be considered an enemy, or just someone that you may not necessarily get along with, that you have to apply that principle of love your enemy. And in the way of, someone that you are, you could be friends with them, or a family member, but yet, they are maybe in opposition of something that you feel like you should hold to. And so, remembering to love, I think, is something that we have to do on this journey. Also, I would say that we have to endure. I've heard the statement that, life is a marathon and not a sprint. And so I think learning how to run and, maintain pace and, continuing on the journey, because I think sometimes we can get to that point where we feel like this journey is super long, and we're like, oh man, this journey is so long, when will it end? Well, remembering, I like to say when talking about endurance is, remembering where we're going, and I say that a lot in my different videos, but, knowing that, hey, if we continue on, we don't have to continue on in suffering or sorrow or just pain, whatever, if it's emotional pain or physical pain, knowing that we just need to make it to the end of this part of life. And after we get to the end of this part of life, it gets so much better, And so I think sometimes we can kind of psych ourselves out where we're like, oh, I can't even make it to the end of this life, and, we are overcome with different worries or fears or, our past can have a big influence on how we think our future is going to be. And we think, oh man, I've been through, this bad thing or that bad thing. And so, the future is not looking bright. And so, one book I highly recommend is the book of Deuteronomy. I think the book of Deuteronomy, Moses and of course God really brings out how there is a spiritual side of life that I don't think, obviously, whoever's listening to this is, thinking about that. But, there's a spiritual side of life, of how life works. And I think that, we as people sometimes think of, the physical side of life where we're like, oh, I need to get a good job and, I need to, marry this person and, everything will just go how it should be if I just, show up, so to speak. And the book of Deuteronomy really brings out how, one, God, not only that, we have that knowledge, like I was saying in the beginning of the podcast, that, we have a knowledge of there is a God, but also, Deuteronomy brings out that, God is expecting us to follow his teachings, his laws, his commands, and that also influences how our life goes. Now, I won't get into that. There are a few things that, some laws are done away with. I wouldn't get into Deuteronomy thinking that, now I need to obey, certain sacrifices or, find a priest to go to or something. The book of Galatians speaks to how, certain laws are done away with. And the main point that we need to get right is faith in Jesus Christ. I would say the book of Romans and the book of Galatians really puts emphasis on faith in Jesus Christ. But, there are books like the book of James who says, hey, you need to remember, these commandments that, he'll bring out certain commandments that do come from, books like Deuteronomy or Exodus, where he's like, hey, if you broke one of these, you broke the whole thing. And then he's like, hey, you need to conduct yourself and speak as if you're going to be held accountable to these laws and commands. And so I would say, going back to, really realizing that, God does have influence on how our life goes, and he has things that he's wanting us to do in order to help our journey go more smooth than what it would go if we didn't necessarily know about books like Deuteronomy and know what God has to say about life. And so just wanted to say that. And so on this journey, I think it's also important that we don't worry about tomorrow. I think Jesus brought that out because when we worry about tomorrow, we can hinder how we are feeling today. And we can hinder, our emotions of today. And I think this is really hard to do sometimes because, sometimes if you're going through something, you can really focus on, I wonder what the outcome is going to be, and especially if, you don't necessarily have a solution today. Like maybe they're telling you, hey, we'll come back to this in 2 weeks or something. And so you're like wondering what it's going to be like in 2 weeks. And so it can be hard to not worry about tomorrow. But, the Bible does tell us that, we shouldn't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. And so, I've heard the saying, and I'm sure maybe you have heard the saying of, just, kind of put one foot forward and, don't worry about, all the different things that you have to do later on in the week, or, not to say that we shouldn't necessarily plan, down the line, but even James, in the book of James, he says, hey, to those who say that, hey, I'm going to go to this city and spend a year there and make money. And, he's saying how, those who try to plan way down in the line, you should really say, if it's God's will, we will do this or that or the other. And James brings out that our life is like a vapor. And, we don't know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. And so James really brings out that saying that Jesus brought out, which is recorded in the Gospels about how, hey, don't worry about tomorrow. And so I think that's something that we have to do on this journey because, even I myself sometimes find myself, thinking about, what am I going to do with this problem? Or, I foresee a problem here, or, and just thinking so much. And, we have to not worry just in general. And the Bible really says, we should pray about everything and not worry about it. Because, Jesus did bring out that, hey, if you're worried, you can't add one hair to your head. And he said, if you worry, you can't extend your life, at all. And so I think that's something important to remember. And so I think, one of the last things I'll leave with on this topic of our journey through life and, how to just keep going on this journey, I think that, we have to try to enjoy life. I think, sometimes we can get so serious about certain things where, we aren't necessarily enjoying life. And, through seriousness, and even though life is serious, but, through just not enjoying life, we can have sorrow. And the book of Ecclesiastes brings out how we should remove sorrow from our heart. And so it says, remove sorrow from our heart, and saying that it is a choice somewhat that we have to make, that, we shouldn't spend our life sorrowful about things. And I think that goes back to how we should pray about a lot of the things that we're going through and look for answers, going back to getting wisdom, going back to, Ecclesiastes, how it says that we should fear God. And so, enjoying life, I think, is very important. I kind of want to read the book Happiness by the same author of Heaven, Randy Alcorn. He made a book called Happiness, but, really, I think it's important to do. And I think one of those, happy feelings comes from not having happiness through sin, through evil. I think we have to remember to turn away from evil and do good, and Peter brings that out in his book, that if we want to love life and see good days, then that's something that we have to do. And so enjoy life, but of course, don't sin trying to enjoy life. But at the same time, we should try to do things that, bring us joy and bring us, happiness. And one last thing I'll leave you with for those that are listening to this today, I think Jesus really brought this out. Obviously this isn't my idea, but not to have too many cares. I think that's one of the things that I will leave you with. Jesus said the cares of life, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desire for other things can come in and choke the word. I think in marriage, you can have a lot of cares. I think with your kids, you can have a lot of cares. I think with money, money can control you. I think, your job or the desire of riches, Jesus brought out that important point that, yes, we should do our part. You should invest in trying to have a good marriage. You should, try to have money for the things that you need. You should try to have a good job or, be a good worker at your workplace. But, at the end of the day, problems can be almost never ending. And, when you have that realization that, this is all from God, like a test from God in a way. Not that God is evil, we're not told that God is evil. But at the same time, these problems that come along, God is in control of our life. And, if we have a lot of cares about all these different things that are in our life and things that are going wrong, I think that it can really affect our joy, our peace. And, this really ties into what I've already said is, we have to give a lot of these situations over to God and put these things in God's hand and trust God, and, He will see us through. Yeah, the truth of the matter is sometimes the world can be dangerous, but at the same time, there are plenty of examples of God delivering people, and someone coming through, a bad situation. Noah survived the destruction of the world. Job was restored. He got back everything that he lost. Jesus was raised back to life. He didn't stay dead. Elijah was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind. Enoch was spared from seeing death. He was found to please God, and so God took him. And then all of us, if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, we are promised basically all those things that I just mentioned, but we're promised to go to a better place. Even if we die, we're promised to be raised back to life, but also we instantly go to heaven. Our spirit goes to heaven. And Jesus told the thief on the cross that today you will be with me in paradise. And so, if we put our faith in Jesus Christ, He said He would give us life more abundantly. That means that apart from Jesus Christ, if you don't have Jesus Christ, you just have life. You don't really have life, but what I'm saying is you're just alive, another person in the world, dealing with problems, and maybe you're winning, maybe you're losing. Some days are different than others. But with Jesus Christ, He said, if you choose Jesus, you'll have life more abundantly. And so, you can have peace and joy in the midst of problems. In the midst of problems, you can know that, hey, I'm going to a better place. God is going to take care of me, and my enemies are not going to have the last laugh. And so that's what I'll leave you with. And so thanks so much for checking out this podcast. We have to continue on our journey. And, I think, they say people die every 2 seconds. So constantly people are either going to heaven or hell. And we don't realize it because the world is so big. But, constantly we are moving up in the line. We are constantly, really, if we are all standing in one line, we would constantly be walking forward. And one day we'll get to the front of the line where it's our time to step into eternity. And so if people are dying every 2 seconds, even though we don't necessarily see that, we are constantly moving to the front of the line. And so your journey will be over soon, in that one day it's going to get either, really good, and if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, He promises to take care of us for all of eternity. So thanks for listening, and I will talk to you on the next one. See ya.